Actually, in the prologue, you said something that struck me from the start. You said, by the time I was 5, it was all too clear something was wrong with me.
Yes.
Do you still see it that way, as something being wrong?
No, no, not at all. I'm so grateful to have lived long enough to see this day. And what I mean by this day is the change that has already happened. And I think that we have to begin to speak life into ourselves and into our communities and not wait for the press to do it, particularly our news cycles that are now based on commerce, right? So if it bleeds, it leads. And if it doesn't, you don't hear anything about it. Nobody's talking about the great things that are happening in this world right now. There are a lot of great things that are happening. I am sitting in front of you as a manifestation of the great things that are happening in this world. When I started in this business, like I said in that first line of the book, there was no space for a person like me.
Right.
There was no space for me. There's a space now. That is a change. That is something different. That is new. And within the last, I would say, 6 to 9 months, it's been my calling to speak life into us. We have to do it ourselves. Nobody is going to save us from ourselves but ourselves.
But I wanna go back to this 5-year-old Billy,
Yes.
thinking there's something wrong. And look, you were sent to preachers. You were sent to doctors.
Yep.
They were trying to groom you to be straight.
Yes.
So the question is, because we're in Florida, and Florida's
Yeah.
gone crazy. The question is, do you think, having gone through what you went through, they were actually trying to pray away the gay, they were
Yes.
trying to take away the gay.
Yes.
Can a child's sexuality be groomed into something else?
No, it can't be. And I think, sexuality as a conversation is ever evolving. The children are teaching us what it looks like to live beyond the binary, beyond the restrictions of the binary. Just as an example, I just turned 53 in September.
Black don't crack.
No, it doesn't. And I don't look like what I've been through. But, I like to say, when I came out in 1985, there was gay and there was straight. Period. There was nothing else. So, even the bisexual conversation was looked down on. We didn't understand it. We didn't get it. And what I love about what's happening today is that there's a cracking open of what it means to be human first, and then the embracing of each one of us's individual sexuality without shame. And that's a difficult thing to do. And I marvel at these kids, because once again, the silver lining of this time, this collective trauma that we've all been through and we're still in the middle of, the kids are leading in ways that were totally unexpected. You know, and the red wave that was supposed to happen didn't happen. In large part because the kids showed up and voted, and now they want to raise the voting age, right? So something is happening in the consciousness of everybody that I think is good for democracy, because democracy only succeeds when the people engage. And I'm not talking about who you vote for. I'm talking about the people being engaged. There are 80 million people in this country that don't vote. That's disgusting. My people died for our right to be able to do this. You know, and so the silver lining, the good news that I see is that way more people are engaged now than there were in 2016. And that is good for democracy.
You know, I don't know how the hell we got into politics on the second question.
Oh, you knew we were. You knew we were.
So last week, finally, 12 Republican senators crossed the line, the party line, and are supporting federal protections on interracial and LGBTQ marriage.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for giving me my inherited rights as a human being.
All righty then. But listen, it is rather, you roll your eyes, and you're right to roll your eyes, because that should be the reaction. But I think, and after 50 years of I having inherent rights, I no longer have them.
Right.
So
And
instead,
that's what we're talking about here. Right.
actually, I don't need them. I'm 50. Everything's fossilized. I mean, not even magic.
Okay.
You say something in this book. You say a phrase that I'd never seen before, and it really caught me. Metabolize trauma.
Yeah, metabolizing your trauma.
What is metabolizing your trauma?
Well,
First of all, how much did you pay to come up with that? No?
A lot. Because that phrase came from my trauma therapist. And I went into trauma therapy during COVID because, you know, God said, sit down. So we were all in our houses, and we all had time to do shit that we wouldn't normally have time to do, right? And so I went into this very focused trauma therapy space. And pretty quickly, I discovered that, you know, I had the highest levels of trauma, I had the highest levels of PTSD, and I, you know, was really good at compartmentalizing everything. And I had gotten to a place where I need to process this now. Metabolizing your trauma. That came directly from my trauma therapist. And it really is a wonderful analogy, because you can't get to the other side of something and heal from something until you name the thing. You know, and I've named the thing my entire life. And now I needed help to figure out how to metabolize that thing so that I could heal. And one of the things that I think was so powerful about me writing this book at this time,
Which you wrote during COVID.
I finished during COVID. Yeah, I started writing before COVID, and then I finished during COVID. And it was very powerful to be revisiting these spaces that I sat inside of the quagmire of for so long without being monitored. You know, when my trauma therapist realized who I was and what I do and she started doing the research on my work, she said, "Oh, you've been working out your trauma and trying to heal from your trauma through your work for your entire career. But you've had nobody monitoring it and helping you understand that that's actually what you're doing."
It was actually before your career. It was probably when you started singing as a
Yes.
child.
Yes.
And you were being molested.
Yes.
At the same time that you're singing like an angel.
Yes.
Tell us
Yeah.
about Bernie.
So, when I was 5 years old, my family, my very religious family, sent me to a psychologist every Wednesday after kindergarten. And I didn't know what I was going for, but like I say in the book, it was clear that something was wrong with me and I needed to be fixed. And, he would just play games with me and talk to me. And after a year of evaluation, he brought my mother in, and essentially in front of me, which I think they shouldn't do this anymore, and they probably don't. But in front of me, this was 1975. So in front of me, he said, "Oh, he's really fine. You just, you should get a man around the house to teach him to be more of a man. But he's fine. Don't worry about it." And so within a year, my mother had met and married my stepfather, who then proceeded to molest me sexually from the time that I was 7 to the time that I was 12. And of course, having been present for that conversation, in my little 7-year-old mind, these were my man lessons, right? I was supposed to be learning how to be more of a man. So of course, then the man has come in and he's teaching me how to be more of a man. And then you couple that with the church, the Pentecostal church, the homophobic Pentecostal black church, and all of a sudden, AIDS has sort of emerged. And now from the pulpit, every time I go to church, I'm hearing that AIDS is God's punishment. And I'm 12 years old and I'm thinking, oh, well, I have AIDS because I'm doing the things that they're talking about with my stepfather. So there was a confusion there that I was able to pull myself out of the abuse. And all I did was say, I just don't want to do this anymore. And it was over. So there's something good about that, and there's also something really confusing about that, because in my mind, then I also thought that I had control over it. Because I stopped it, so why did it start to begin with if I didn't have control over it? It wasn't until I was in my mid-20s and started therapy, I was calling the abuse an affair for the first 25 years of my life. And my therapist was like, we have to stop that right now. That is not an affair. You were 7 years old.
Right.
You were abused. That was a predator. You have to understand that right now. And
It's a crime.
it is a crime. It is a crime. And, at that time, there wasn't much that I could do about it. My mother, God bless her sweet soul, is disabled. And she had a disability that was medical malpractice, but nonetheless degenerative. It presents as cerebral palsy. She's 77 years old. It's never actually been fully diagnosed. They don't even know what to call it. And so she didn't really have anywhere to go. He was the breadwinner. So I had to go. You know, I had to pull myself together, save myself, and go. And it was my art that saved me. It was my art. That saved me. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how else to.
And you also had angels.
Yes.
Is what you call them in your life,
Yes, I did.
who helped you, who
Yes.
saved you, who
Yeah.
made it possible. Can you tell us about some of those people and what they meant to you?
Yeah, you know, I'm a product of being first generation post civil rights movement. I got into the 6th grade in 1980, when Reagan was elected as president, and there were policies in place that were meant to level the playing field. And I was the last generation to benefit from those policies. I would not be here before you as the human being that I am if those policies did not exist to help people like me. I had a God-given innate talent. And as a result of that, there were angels in positions of power who saw that and who were able to push me in the right directions, whether it was free music classes or free dance classes or,
Driving you across town?
yeah, you know, going to, you know, dance classes an hour away from my house on the other side of town, and, you know, a family stepping up to, you know, drive me in their pickup truck across town at 10 o'clock at night after dance classes were over.
A white family.
A white family, you know, and their son, their straight son, were in the same dance classes as me, and they would put us in the back of their pickup truck and stop at Wendy's and drive me all the way home on the other side of town, which was literally 45 minutes away without traffic. You know, I wouldn't be here. There but for the grace of God go I, right? And those angels in my life were prominent and necessary.
I have to ask you this. Do you speak Russian?
So there's a story in the book that, you know, hopefully you'll read and understand. So the short story is, when I was in the 6th grade, my middle school, the public education system, you know, there was a high school in the Jewish part of town that was the best high school in the city. And, you know, people were pulling their children out of private schools to send them to this public school in Squirrel Hill in Pittsburgh in the Jewish neighborhood. It was, I would say, 80% Jewish, 15% black, 5% other. And I learned that if I got good enough grades, by the in 6th and 7th grade, by the time I got to 8th grade, I could take classes for high school credits. So I could take a math, which was algebra, and I could take a language. And so I learned that my middle school was the only school in the city that taught Russian as a language. And the only high school that taught it that was a continuation was Taylor Alderdice High School. And if I took it in the 8th grade and I wanted to continue, they would have to let me go to this high school, which I was not gerrymandered into. And not only would they have to let me go to this high school, but they would have to because there were no school buses to take me from my neighborhood, they would have to give me a free monthly bus pass on public transportation. that then paid for all of the extracurricular activities that I had going on in my life for free. I figured this out in the 6th grade because I knew I had to save myself. I was like, because the school that I was being funneled into was like the lean on me school. And my gay ass would have never made it out of there alive. I was like, I got to get to this nicer school, honey.
You gotta go rescue Brittany Griner. You gotta make a little time because we gotta go do so. We should and let us say her name
Yes.
because
Brittany
that is
Griner.
horrible what's happening there. So you're going through this, and one of the things that struck me is how early in your life you knew you had this passion and that this is what you had to do, whether it meant trekking across town, whether it meant learning Russian, whatever you had to do. You had this burning passion
Yeah.
in your heart since you were a tiny little boy.
Yeah.
Which is extraordinary. I mean,
Yes,
you
it
realize
is.
there's a bunch of 70-year-olds who go
No, I
around
know.
and still don't know what the hell they want to do
I
when they
know.
grow up.
It's
So what's that like, though, to know at that age, this is it, and I got the magic inside? Because when adults would see you sing, you'd get weird looks like, holy cow, did we just see this?
Yeah, well, I started singing in church around the age of 5. And then elementary school was very bullyish. And then in the 5th grade, I happened to sing at the talent show. And all of a sudden, the bullying stopped. And it was like, oh, what power is this? So I just started singing everywhere. And then when I got to 6th grade, I was introduced to musical theater. And we did our first, I did my first show, which was Babes in Arms. And they said, there was a room of hundreds of kids. And they said, the director said, so we're going to do Babes in Arms, Rodgers and Hart, for those of you who are musical theater followers. And every role will be double cast because there were so many people that wanted to be in it. And the cast list went up, and every role was double cast except me. And I was always the last person picked in gym. So all of a sudden, I was the first person picked for something. And I understood, oh, what does this mean? Right? Somebody thinks I can do something. I've never even done it before, but somebody thinks I can do something. And so I did the play, the musical. It was wonderful. I was bit by the bug. And then I was watching, I happened to stumble across the Tony Awards that year. I was washing dishes in my kitchen, talk about this in the book.
What is it that you call it? The gay Olympics? The gay what?
Yes. the gay Super Bowl.
Oh.
Yes. And it was the year that Dreamgirls was up. And Jennifer Holliday, all of a sudden, well, first of all, the entire cast was on, and they were all gorgeous, and they were all, in like gorgeous gowns and suits and beautiful, and like, you didn't have a reflection of black people like that on television very often at that time. This is 81. And then Jennifer Holliday launched into And I'm Telling You, I'm Not Going, and she was singing the way I sang. And one of the things, sang in church. And one of the things that was a disconnect for me in doing Babes in Arms is that I wasn't singing like me. I was singing the notes that they taught me, but I wasn't singing organically from the place that I understood how to sing. So there were two things that happened. The first was, oh, I can sing like me. And secondly, even though it was theater, it was on television. And so there was something about seeing it on television that in my little, 11, 12-year-old brain was able to process and go, oh, I could do this for money. I could make a living doing this. I'm going to do that. And that's what set me, to speak about what knowing so early. It was, luckily I was able to see myself reflected in that performance in some way that helped me make positive decisions and forward-moving decisions.
Billy, you grew up being told there was something wrong with you. You grew up being beat to a pulp.
Yes.
There were times when you had to be taken to the hospital.
Yes.
You were bullied and beat so hard. How surreal, how magical, how significant, how liberating is it to be able to be Billy today?
I was always told that my queerness would be my liability. And it was. For decades, it was. And, the first decade of my life was a bunch of Broadway shows. I had an R&B album, R&B record contract on A&M Records. And I tried to do everything that I was told to do at that time. You can't, you're too extra, you're too gay, you got to do it like this if you want to be successful. And I was just, I didn't know anything different, so I was just trying to be successful. And the turning point for me was in 1999 having everything implode on me, particularly in the music industry. And then looking at that journey and seeing that over a series of years, me giving in to what I was told I needed to do and be to be successful rendered me a human being that I didn't recognize. And so I failed as somebody else. And I thought, here's the lesson in that. I will never do that again. If I'm going to fail as me. I'm not going to ever fail as somebody else again. And so it was in that moment when I was 30 where I went, I actually can't be anything but myself, no matter where the chips may fall. So I chose it in that moment. I was also watching Oprah at that time too, and she had on, as we were all wont to do at that time, and she had on Iyanla Vanzant and Maya Angelou, and they were talking about service. Mm. And their theory is when you shift your intention to service, everything else will work itself out. And I literally went after that episode, looked at myself in the mirror and said, okay, Billy, what does service look like for you in real time? In an industry and, quite frankly, a world that is inherently narcissistic. What does service look like for you? And it hit me like a ton of bricks. It's your queerness. It's everything that everybody is telling you is your liability. And I know it was the Spirit speaking to me. The universe, God, whatever you want to call it. And it's like, I know it doesn't look like right now that that's the way you should go. Jump off the ledge and believe. And so I did. And it was not quick. That was 2000. It was not quick. The journey was not quick. You know, I went through, my 30s were very, very hard. You know, 2007 was the worst year of my life.
Is that the lowest moment?
Yes. February, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. March, I was signing bankruptcy papers, and by June, I was diagnosed HIV positive. I never thought I was going to make it out of that. I had become the exact statistic that my government said I would be, that my church preached from their pulpits and prophesied that I would never be blessed because I was a homosexual and AIDS was God's punishment. All of those things, you know, all of that non-life that was spoken into me had come to pass. And I didn't know what I was going to do. But all I knew how to do was keep putting one foot in front of the other and knowing deep in my spirit that that's all that I had. That's all that I had. And whatever it was going to be the thing that it was supposed to be. You know, you are exactly where you're supposed to be, even when it's uncomfortable. I started living like that. I marvel every single day at the life that I'm living right now. It makes me emotional. Sometimes it's hard to grasp. And I am so grateful that I've lived long enough to see this day. Because so many of my friends and colleagues and mentors and allies did not. So when you see me in these spaces, when you see me in these intersections, when you see me as this, you know, riled up, political, you know, fashion iconish, activist, whatever you want to call it, who won't shut the fuck up, that's the reason why. We're not going back. We're just not. The world only spins forward.
Okay, let's lighten up.
Yes.
Do you own sweatpants?
I do.
And so, like, during COVID, were you sitting there ever, like, in sweatpants, eating Haagen-Dazs?
Always. Sitting in sweatpants, sitting in sweat clothes. I bought a house out on Long Island. One of my favorite things to do is not get dressed. One of my favorite things to do is just walk around my house, no drawers on, some sweatpants, a little shirt, and like nothing. You know, I did start dressing from the top up for Zoom calls and things.
So did Jeffrey Toobin.
Yes, so I did for like a year and a half, dress from the top up. You know, you'll also see me in sweatpants or sweat clothes, or when I'm doing, when I'm walking the dog in the city, because, you know, I got a new dog. We've had her for about a year and a half now. And so when I walk the dog, I will have my sweat clothes in the city. Now, here's what I will say, though. Athleisure, as they call it in the fashion world, has stepped up.
Thank you,
It has
Beyonce.
stepped up Beyonce, you know, it was a little bit before her, but I know when Beyonce does it, she gets all the credit. You know, I know she created house music. It never existed before her. And I love her. I love her. But house music did not come from her. She did not create it, Generation Z. But I am really, you know, I'm first generation post-civil rights movement. You put on a suit. You were a credit to your race. You didn't embrace prison culture and wear your pants down below your butt crack because you didn't have a belt in your jail cell. That's not how we did it. So I missed that cultural moment that where it shifted into sort of all of this athleisure wear. And I will never spend $5,000 on a Gucci tracksuit. I'm not going to do it. I'm just not. I'm not spending $5 on track clothes, on sweatsuits. I'm not going to ever do that. If y'all want to gift it to me, I will wear it always. I'm not spending $5,000 on a tracksuit, y'all. I just can't do it. I'm just from a different generation. But I am loving where athleisure has gone. And I've made a couple of calls, actually. Y'all, if y'all haven't seen Puma's new 2023 moment, Puma is, I was like, give me all of this. I will wear all of this on a daily basis.
Okay, let's talk about
Yes.
the Met Gala. And let's talk about the camp look. How do you come up with this stuff?
Well, you know, I work with
That's the one where
artisans
he was in gold from head to toe and being carried
wings,
with wings
Yes.
and being carried by like 12 men.
8.
Oh, okay.
Only 8. So I have a lot of ideas. And, you know, that was my first stylist. And we sort of came up with that idea. He actually had the idea for me to be carried in. I thought, Anna Wintour is never going to let me do that. And then he called over and she said yes. So we made that happen. You know, I work with,
It was fabulous.
thank you. I work with the artisans, my glam squad, who are brilliant, brilliant artisans. I call them artisans. And, you know, I have an idea. We have ideas together. And they go out and bring my ideas to fruition in ways that I really could not do by myself. I could not do it by myself.
Billy, I want to talk because, again, we are in Florida and everything that's going on, even nationally. Let's talk about men who wear skirts.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about drag queens.
Yes.
Drag queens have been targeted in this state and other places as predators.
Right.
How do you respond to that?
It's difficult for me to engage in foolishness. We've seen it in different iterations and incarnations for our entire existence. All of us in this room, it's the same shit, different day. And we give it power and oxygen to grow when we don't call it out. When we use the news cycles to simply complain without offering any type of solution. That's what I love so much about you, is that you don't just complain. You talk about the solutions. Frederick Douglass said, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. The messaging for how we show up in the state that we're in right now, in this activist posture that we all have to collectively be in, is to know once again that none of it is new.
Do you feel we all have a duty in our different communities to represent?
Yes, I do. And I don't put that duty on anybody else.
I do.
I put it on myself. The only thing we can do is show up and create a difference by being an example. I just want to be an example so you see what you should be doing. I'm going to show up and do that first and foremost. You know, the messaging of how we show up has to change. When they go low, we go high. Yes.
No.
Yes. No,
No.
let me finish. Let me finish.
No.
Let me finish. Let me finish. I know it's annoying. Let me finish though. Inside of that, if we're going to be in that moral place, which is okay, I understand why. We all collectively have to redefine what going high in this new world order
Okay.
looks like. It is not 1962. It is not 1965. It is not 1975. And we have to stop taking a bag of popcorn to a fucking gunfight. And it's been a gunfight for 40 years. Sorry. It's been a gunfight, and they've been playing a very specific and particular game for decades. And we have been asleep because our government, which has been exposed right now, right? So now we got to go back in and fix this part. But a lot of what happens in our government is, and decisions are based on someone's moral fortitude to choose the right thing.
And oftentimes,
so much of it.
yeah, and oftentimes they're doing immoral things behind closed doors. Falwells.
But you're like, what do you mean it's not a law? What do you mean the Voting Rights Act is not a fucking law already? The first time I heard codify anything was like 3 months ago. 2 months, 6 months ago. What do you mean codify? So wait, had you codified it, it couldn't have been overturned. So what the fuck are you waiting for? 50 years and you didn't codify it? What the fuck is that? Y'all are not doing your job. So now we the people, as we learn more about it and more about this convoluted system that's convoluted on purpose to get us all fatigued, it's convoluted on purpose. Really? Oh, so now you're going to codify same-sex marriage. Oh, it could never happen. Oh, it could never happen. Okay. Well, now we know that's not the truth. So what are we going to do about it now? And how are we going to hold these people, our representatives' feet to the fire? Codify all of it. What the fuck are y'all waiting for? You're supposed to be protecting us. 50 years? 50 years
50
and it wasn't
years.
codified. I didn't even know what that word meant. I didn't even know that was a fucking thing. It's shameful. It is shameful. And I love, nobody's perfect. But that shit is shameful.
So on that note,
She don't shut up, honey. Which is why we get along so well.
wait, so I see people there converging. Are we going to take questions from the audience? Is it now? Oh, so we're,
Come on with questions.
come up.
Yes?
So if any of you have any questions,
You got to come to the middle aisle
well, they do that.
like Oprah used to do.
I watched you the other day on Rachel Ray saying you used to cook 30-minute meals.
I did.
Oh, come on.
I did.
In your in your sweatpants, you're cooking Rachel
No,
Ray's 30
here's
minutes.
the thing with Rachel Ray's 30-minute meals from a person who learned how to cook family style. My grandmother, my great aunt, my mother, we cooked Sunday suppers. So I know how to cook, but I only know how to cook for at least 12 to 15 people. So when I moved to New York City and I started cooking, I was always over cooking. So the thing that 30-minute meals did for me was actually give me ideas, that were outside of what I would normally do, and the portions were for 2 people. So that's how I learned how to do that.
Not cook for 15.
Right. Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Hi, good afternoon. First of all, I'm going to thank my friend Donna for inviting me today.
Hi, Donna. What's your name?
My name is Ramona Hall.
Ramona.
And Anna, we have this Capricorn. I love you, and I love you too, Billy. But to have both of you together in this energy has been beautiful.
Thank you.
I wanted to find out what your thoughts were, unfortunately, on the recent shooting that occurred in Colorado
Oh,
today.
you know.
You can just share.
Well,
some of your
it
thoughts
just
on that.
happened last night. I am filled with rage. And, it's common now. It's normalized now. And we have to reverse that. I'm not sure how to do that. Listen, I'm not sure how to do it. But whatever this was that we just went through in this election, there is hope on the table. There is democracy for the next 2 years at least. Okay. So we have to make sure that we hold that Senate.
Okay.
We have to make them do right.
Absolutely.
We have to make them do right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, a way to do it is not to demonize others,
No.
not to demonize LGBTQ, not to demonize Hispanics, not
Yeah.
to demonize Jews.
Yeah.
I know that this for you was incredibly significant, what happened at Tree of Life.
Yeah.
These are your people.
Yes. I sang at bat and bar mitzvahs at the Tree of Life Synagogue when I was a kid. Pittsburgh has the highest population per capita of Jewish people next to New York in the United States. All of my friends were Jewish. I took a nice Jewish girl to the prom, Alexandra Berger, and I dated her brother.
And lastly, Anna, for you, what fabulous dessert are you making for Al this Thanksgiving?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And lastly, for Anna, for you, what fabulous dessert are you making Al for this Thanksgiving?
Wait, say that again?
What fabulous dessert is Anna making for Al this Thanksgiving?
Not a goddamn thing. I'm going to Lee Schrager's house. Lee brings in a chef.
Work it out.
Hi, both of you.
Hi, honey. Speak loud in the mic.
Thank you so much for being here. Once you said that to be a great actor, you had to consciously break the rules. And I wanted to know if that is also true for writing for you.
You always have to. Here's the thing. I am an education bitch. I like to learn the rules so that I can consciously break them. Rules are made to be broken, but if you don't know what the rules are, then you're just flying by the seat of your pants. So I have always been a person who loved to understand what the rules are, and then I consciously break them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Adriana. I'm come all over from Peru to see you.
Oh,
Wow.
thank you.
Have you been to Machu Picchu?
I have not yet.
So we are waiting for you. You have
I will be there.
You have a great community fans there, so I will be grateful to have you there. So I have 2 things to say. The first one is thank you for all your post work. I am now I'm applying for a PhD and I'm going to work on HIV thanks to POSE.
Oh,
So
awesome.
thank you very much.
Yes.
And then I want to know how was to make POSE and how was the whole process on doing a TV series on HIV and how was the conversation about the epidemics since the series was launched. So thank you.
I always suffered from survivor's guilt. Having come out right at the sort of mid-beginning of the AIDS crisis, and going straight to the front lines to fight for our lives. And I always asked the universe, like, why did I get to live? Why did I get to, why am I here? And when Pose came around, when the audition came in for Pose, before I even got it, I knew and understood, oh, this is why. Because I now get to go back and tell a story that I lived to a lot of people who have forgotten it and or never knew it. And as a person who has dedicated my life to service, right? The law of attraction attracted the service gig to me. Pose is service. Kinky Boots is service, right? These gigs that have sort of come to me are already set up as service. So I'm really grateful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey everybody. Hey Billy.
Hi.
I'm Daniel. I'm from Colombia. I'm not from here too. And I listened to you talking about all the stuff that you have been, you have to break, so you have been able to reach the person that you are today. And I can also see that you are a person that have traveled a lot, and I guess you have been able to connect with people from different places. Do you think there is all this stuff that we have to break in different environments? I mean, this might be the perspective from USA. Do you think there is people from, I don't know, any other place around the world that have to break different stuff that maybe is not from their context, I guess?
Yeah, I think, each one teach one. We have to lead by example. And wherever you are, whatever country, whatever space, whatever community, the courage to not only understand the truth, but then lead, take up space, know that you stand for something. First stand for something, and then take up space to show the world what that looks like. That's what I'm trying to do. And, it sounds like you're in search of something, and that is the beginning of understanding that wherever you get to, it's about never being silent. Understanding what it is that you want to say, what it is that you want to do, and then doing it. Publicly, out loud, without shame.
Okay. Sorry.
We got a long line behind you, so let's let
Oh, yeah.
somebody else.
Get it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
So, you recently won the Tony for producing A Strange Loop, and I was able to see it this summer. And seeing a musical with a plus-size queer person of color as a lead on Broadway feels so important. In even this day and age, it's still very rare to see a plus-size queer person of color play a lead. So, and unfortunately, the show is closing in January, but it's just one of those life-changing pieces of art I was able to witness firsthand. So, what's the value in being able to produce and finance work by queer writers, by black writers, by people who aren't of the Broadway archetype to be able to make new work?
Strange Loop I believe, is a product of our time, right? Being inside of the coronavirus, being inside of the Trump presidency. Toni Morrison speaks about art, and she says this is precisely the time when artists go to work. There's no need for fear, there's no room for silence. We speak, we write, we do language. This is how civilizations heal. We're at a very interesting time right now. Post George Floyd, there are inclusivity and diversity conversations that are happening, and sometimes there's a follow through. And what you saw in Strange Loop being produced on Broadway is a manifestation of that follow through. I saw it off Broadway before COVID, and never in a million years did I ever think for 1 millisecond that it would ever be on Broadway. It wasn't even a question that it would not be on Broadway, right? Because it was, like you just said, a plus size black queer man talking about his journey. Nobody wants to see that on Broadway in this mainstream white folk space. Nobody wants to see that. And so literally even myself, who's open to the most change in the world, it never even crossed my mind that it would make it to Broadway.
And then it swept at the Tonys.
And then, I get a call from the producer saying, we're trying to get this to Broadway and we want to try something by using celebrity, names who, would sort of fit with the subject matter to sort of help us get the word out. So I was like, yeah, absolutely. It's going to Broadway for real? Like, even at that point, I was like, it really is going to Broadway? And so I lent my name, and I gave my name, and I went to see the Broadway show on Broadway, and I couldn't stop weeping, because I was like, is everybody seeing what I'm seeing? And understanding the importance of this story being told in this space. It doesn't matter how quick it closes. It was there. It won the Pulitzer. It won Best Musical. It was there. The conversation is started. And now it's up to you and me and everybody else to make sure that this is not where the conversation ends.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hi, how are you?
Great. My name's Linda Harris. This is my sister Natalie.
Hi.
She turned me on to you when Pose was being shown. She went to Morocco. I laid in her bed for probably 2 weeks, you guys were gone, and just binged, and I have been a fan ever since. My question is, as a black woman and what we went through, COVID, all the killings, I am tired.
Yeah.
I am traumatized. I want to take off my crown and my cape. Do you ever just shut it down and just say, I'm tired?
Yes, of course. I think one of the biggest things that I've been thinking about and trying to sort of wrap my head around, when I speak about the messaging has to change, right? Those of us of a certain age in the black community, we were fed this idea that a change is going to come. And unconsciously inside of a change is going to come is we get it and then it's done, right? I don't think many of us paid enough attention to John Lewis in his 80-year-old life. It's like No, the fight never ends.